Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Connections by TalentStore. My name is Arun Nagarajah. I'm the founder of TalentStore. And today we have Sheryl Baretto from Freshly Simple. They are a Malaysian registered training provider. And it's an honor to have you on the show, Sheryl.
You.
I think as my first question, I think I'm really intrigued. And I think the first time I saw your organization name, I was thinking, oh, it's a very unique name. So can you tell me a little bit about why Freshly Simple, right? What made you choose this name?
Okay, yeah, I get this question many times, Arun. First of all, thanks for the introduction. And yeah, hi
Sure.
to everyone. Good morning. Okay, so the reason I think is one is HR as a platform, because Freshly Simple is basically a total HR platform which
Mm,
provides three different type of services. So when we were actually thinking of the name, we were seeing names like, HR this, HR that, training and development this. And then we said, why not just come out with a unique name? Let's keep people guessing as to what we are really doing, and that would also increase curiosity. So we came up with this name, but the reason also for coming up with this name is because, as you know, Arun, the learning and development space is very
yeah.
competitive, but at the same time it is also becoming very, very digitalized, right? Which is a good
Yep.
sign, but at the same time I think people also need a personal vibe, right? And so the whole name or the conception of Freshly Simple came about as, yes, we were fresh that time within Malaysia, so we said, okay,
Okay.
that sounds good, and we intend remaining fresh. And simple was, we believe that very simple methods of training can register a lot with the audience, and that is why we realized that let's put this as Freshly Simple, that we come out with very simple methods, very simple ways of understanding, and that's how the name conceptualized. And we get,
Okay.
I mean, a lot of people, when we go for sessions and meetings, do ask us how you came. They get quite intrigued by the name. Many a times have to explain we are not doing, or we are not selling organic vegetables and fruits. But yes, it comes across like that initially,
Yeah.
but once people
Yeah.
understand the whole concept behind it, yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I also assumed initially like, oh, it's something that I would imagine for like a grocery
Yes.
retailer or or something like that. So then the question is, you mentioned about total HR. Can you explain a little bit about what you mean by total
Yeah.
HR? So I understand that you do training, but I guess you do a lot more. Can you just explain a
Yes.
little bit more of what you offer?
Yes. So, Arun, what we offer is, of course, your complete end to end. So, when we
Okay.
say end to end, we start with talent management and talent acquisition. So, any
Mm-hmm.
organization that needs to hire, the hard to find positions, the difficult to
Okay.
place positions. We started off with the oil and gas industry because my husband has a total 39-year background in oil and gas. So our
Okay.
main customers started with the oil and gas industry because the database was huge, but now we have progressed into different organizations. So that is one side.
Mm.
Different
Okay.
industries, sorry, that is one side. The other part is, of course, training and development. But when we talk about training and development, it's just not that one of a training or one of a workshop. We create journeys. So, be it a graduate development program, be it a leadership development program, we create journeys
Sure.
of 2 months, 3 months, so that there is an impact of the training. Normally, of course, we
Mm-hmm.
do small workshops too, but then we see that the impact is not there. So, we prefer
Yeah.
creating journeys. And that's one of the things that we are planning to do this year. The third thing is, of course, HR consultancy services. So the HR consultancy services are more based on what does an organization wants, whether it's comp and ben, whether it is,
Okay.
like organization restructuring. So anything that comes under that portfolio, or even journeys, combining the training and development into a service, into a consultancy service. And last but
Okay.
not the least, we offer even HRIS advice. That is, if any organization wants to look at an HRIS implementation, we have partnered ourselves with two very well-known, HRIS platforms, and we also
Okay.
advise on that. That is why we say it's a start to finish. That's what our
Okay.
platform is about. Yeah.
All right. I mean, so then, you talk about that end-to-end solution, right? So when you go to a client, do you tend to start in a certain area and then kind of evolve, or is it mainly based on what the client is looking for, and then you kind of go deeper with the client, right? I would imagine that's the way you go about it.
Yes. Of course, we do present our company, but first of all, we
Hmm.
try to figure out what the client wants from us. Sometimes the
Sure,
client
of
just
course.
wants recruitment. Sometimes the client, and they don't want to know what else you're doing, right? But later
Yeah,
on, we've realized that if we start on one angle, then we do get an advance of saying that, okay, you're doing this, then why don't you do this? So that's how we start with organizations. We do not enforce
yeah,
what we are doing. We try to figure out what the client wants, and we then say that, okay, we can offer you this. Definitely, we would love them to know all that we are doing, but then that's not going to serve the purpose. Once we
yeah,
get in, the main important part for Freshly Simple is to get into the organization. When we get
yeah.
into the organization, then we can definitely advertise our other services. But yes, we do not enforce what we have on a client.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
and your background is pretty unique, lah. I mean, you started in HR. I think you were working in India and then also in Malaysia.
Yes.
Can you just give me a little bit of background on how you ended up being in the training industry in Malaysia? Where was that origin story from?
Okay. So basically, yes, a long career span in India. Didn't start as an HR professional, just got into HR by
Okay.
accident. But an interesting accident, I should say. I mean, that's the reason why I'm where I am today.
Mm,
Then my company had actually transferred me to US. So I have a 2 year stint in US where I worked as
okay.
an HR head for the plant that we had acquired in Michigan.
Okay.
After that, my husband got a job here, posting in Malaysia, and that's how we landed into Malaysia. So
Okay.
when I came into Malaysia, it was very difficult for me to find an HR job, and I think it's by default, because any country or any place you go to, they would definitely like to have a local HR, local finance person, so you understand things in a better way. So that was
Sure.
a real, that was a great challenge for me when I came to Malaysia. Though I did get a exclusive consultancy thing with Oyo, which was a low budget hotel, and since it was an India based firm, it was just a little bit easier for me to get there. So I worked with them
Okay.
for 14 months. But the main idea of starting Freshly Simple was for me to get out as an entrepreneur and actually do my training and development. So training and
Okay.
development has always been my passion. But of course, I mean, my husband really pushed me to it, saying that I think you need to get out on your own and start, facing the world and taking on those challenges instead of just working for one company. And that's how the whole
Mm,
thing came out. So passion is there, yes. There is great passion for learning and development. Overall, HR has been always done by me in organizations. So I
yeah.
understand HR as a concept, understand HR as a function, but the inclination or the passion is towards training and development.
Okay, okay. So yeah, I mean that I think a lot of people that I speak to, the freelance trainers that I speak to, I mean, a lot of them started off very functional in very
Yes,
functional roles, developed expertise, and then started to move out. I think your role, your background is probably quite unique because you have that experience in HR, right? Which I think a lot of people don't have necessarily and they move into training.
right.
How do you think that has helped you and some of your clients, like that HR experience? You can relate to some of the challenges they face in terms of learning development. Have you been able to leverage that background effectively, like, to really be able to address what the client needs?
Yeah. So Arun, let me just go a little bit
Sure.
away from your question. The reason I say this is because when I came to Malaysia, right, I found that the training and development market is too competitive. Okay. Now, when I say
Okay.
competitive, you have too many training providing companies. And when I actually
Yeah.
went and Googled and did my whole research, we have about 4,000 odd training providing companies in Malaysia
Yeah.
alone, which is
Yeah.
huge. Okay,
Yeah.
for I think a 33 million population, it's really huge. And then you have
Yeah.
almost about 10,500 freelance individual training providers, okay,
Yeah.
trainers. Now,
Yeah.
when I actually entered into the market, we, as in my partner and me, we were wondering how would we really create that space, or create that niche for people to
Mm,
understand we are here. Frankly speaking, I attended a few training sessions myself to understand what the market needs, or what is it that gets delivered here, okay, in terms of training. I should say some
sure.
are really great, some are excellent trainers. Like, of course, I saw Sashi, he was really good that day. So
Yeah.
you come across these, and then you come across somebody who has not been in this space at all and just takes
Mm,
it as as something that they think they can do really well, or they feel that okay, training is the most easiest thing to get into. You be a subject matter expert. So
Yeah.
I feel that is where I think Malaysia really needs to improve in terms of figuring out how do you really get
Mm.
those best. I'm not saying that an
Yeah.
engineer can't be a good trainer. I'm not saying a person from a medical field can't be a good trainer. But I think at the end of the day, it's what you've done throughout your entire career, and how much have you
Yeah.
really connected with people. Because for me, training and development is a people connection, right? And
Yeah.
unless and until you have that, it really doesn't go down into people's mind and heart and everything, right? So for me, that
Mm.
becomes really very important. So if you say that, yes, the experience of being into HR has really helped me. Reason because I could understand people, I could connect well with people, but at the
Sure.
same time, I did have difficulties, especially in Malaysia, uh, to get that visibility, to get people to understand that I come with this really strong background, and this is what
Okay.
I can really offer. So this is where I faced a little bit of a challenge. Of course, now if you say, as I said, oil and gas industry was where we actually started most of our things. Uh, I think I think big companies or big industries realize where you come from, your background, and then they say, okay, fine, we would really love to have you.
Yeah.
So I guess um, it's not been easy to penetrate into the Malaysian market, but
Yeah.
it's not something that we should say that we've not been able to. We have got some really good clients. We've been able to really create that
Sure.
niche, but are we there yet? No, there's a long way to go.
No.
Yes.
Okay. And,
Yeah.
and if you compare the training market in India, I don't know how you would be able to connect it, but then do you see a difference in terms of the maturity of trainers, the execution level? Because yeah, you're right. In Malaysia, it's a very, very competitive market. Because I think HRDC has created this system for competition,
Yes.
right? Because of this levy, so
Hmm.
people understand there is this huge budget that's available. Why don't I tap onto that,
Right.
right? So
Yes.
the system has created this outcome where you have hundreds of thousands of customers, and then you got thousands of providers. Um, but
Right.
if you compare to like a huge country like India, where you are from, how is the dynamic over there versus here?
Okay. So when I talk about the learning and development space, right, I take it as the L&D space.
Yep.
I will just speak about India and US because I've been in both the places.
Okay.
Where
Sure.
India is concerned, to be a trainer is not very easy. Okay. One is because a lot is tested on your capabilities, right?
Mm.
Also, the name creates a lot of what you say influence in the Indian
Okay.
industry. So you
Okay.
just can't go there and say, okay, I've started this company, I'm a trainer, so I would like to come and introduce myself. No. So India goes a lot by brands and names, to be very frank.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
They
Sure.
definitely like to go the big names with the big industry names, and they would like to be linked with those type of industries. The reason is, of
Mm.
course, because in India you easily can't become a trainer. Let me also give that perspective. Okay, if you
Okay.
really want to do an L&D certification and come out as a trainer, your GPA has to be really that level. Otherwise, they just tell you, they don't give you the certificate. Okay.
Okay.
So that is why it's not easy to become a trainer in India. You need to go through a lot of certifications. People see what you're getting to the table. What is it that you have, your intelligence level,
Sure.
your aptitude, your attitude, everything. So when I look in that concept, India is not an easy market to tap if we were in a situation like Malaysia. Understood? So
Mm.
like everybody and anybody can't be a trainer there, right? So
Okay.
so that
Understand.
is one thing. When you go to US, you realize also that US is quite open in terms of learning and development. But for them to really conduct training courses, again, they will go with the big names, right? But US by itself thinks, okay, that fundamentally they are already intelligent. So that training and development has not really taken a great space. It's very
Okay.
few organizations that feel we need to coach or develop our leaders, or we need to do something for our people. But the focus is not there so much on learning and
Okay.
development. You have That's why you find that the L&D people, specifically from countries like US, Europe, they're always finding avenues to come into countries like the Asian countries to give out of to showcase their capabilities, and they get an
Okay.
opportunity, right? Like Malaysia, Indonesia, you see a lot of Europeans and US or whatever, people coming to these countries to actually showcase their capabilities in terms of the L&D space. So if I
Okay.
compare in that way, I would say Malaysia is doing a great job in terms of at least giving that understanding to people that yes, we are there to develop you, we are there to train you, but the only process I feel is not right. The way they do
Mm.
it, I mean, like HRDC should be a little bit more stringent in how they give out the certification. Like
Okay.
all
Yep.
22 people attending a course not necessarily are good trainers, right?
Yep.
So I think
Understand.
that way, if you could be a bit more stringent in understanding the process, and because you're imparting knowledge, Arun, one main important thing is that you're training and imparting knowledge. And if you just
Right.
certify anybody and everybody, you're creating a lot of unwanted, what do you say, unwanted chaos in an
Yep. Yep.
industry which is supposed to impart and give knowledge. Yeah. Yeah.
Correct. Correct. No, I completely agree with you. I think even when we came into the industry, we were very I was very amazed like, that there was such a level of competition. Um,
Yes.
and and you're right. I think that comes down to why we also started Talent Store, right? Because I felt that there
Yes.
wasn't a measure of quality in the industry. So if I wanted to know how Cheryl is versus another person, it's quite difficult unless I can connect feedback from the same person across the two
Right.
suppliers or two partners, right? So that's why we thought, okay, like, how do we create a platform which enables customers, participants to give feedback so that I can compare easily without having go through the long
Right.
process to go and pull this information together. Um, but in terms of so you've been here for a few years. I mean, you've been in the industry as well. Like, where do you see the market evolving to? Right. I think HRDC, a couple of years. I think now, 2022. I think they expanded the levy to every pretty much every organization in Malaysia except for
Right.
really small organizations. Um, how do you think, in your own point of view, like, where you think this leads to, and where do you see the market going to in the next 4 to 5 years?
Okay. Frankly, if you ask me, I think one thing Malaysia does good is having this fund to develop people, right? Most of the
Mm.
countries don't have this. So that
Yep.
is why organizations have to figure out how to get a budget to train and develop their people. And that becomes
Yep.
a stringent, or that becomes a way of, in India and US and all that, they have to really figure out how they can really have a budget for this. Luckily, Malaysia has created that space for organizations to really take undue advantage of this situation and really develop their people, to which I'm really
Yep.
very thankful. Otherwise, people like you and me wouldn't have been able to sustain, right? So that's
Yep.
a good thing that Malaysia does. But are they doing it in a right way? I'm not very sure. As I said, rules and regulations need to be more stringent. HRDC as a
Okay.
body is supposed to see how trainers survive, how the platform survives. So what is the scope that HRDC does to see that they give these individual trainers or training providing companies opportunities to work, um, not only as a part of HRDC but also as a part of training and imparting knowledge to organizations around, right?
Yep.
um, yeah, and I also think as a corporation or as a fund, when HRDC does trainings in house, right, it sort of takes
Yeah.
away a lot of capital from the outside market, which people could use it outside. That is one thing I
Sure.
feel where HRDC should differentiate themselves, right? That's the future. I talk about Malaysia as a whole, where they should
Mm.
differentiate themselves and give platforms like you or me to do that job, because that's what we are
Right.
here for, right? That
Sure.
is number one. I think in the for future of Malaysia, I think one thing important is digitalization. We talk a lot about it, Arun, but Malaysia is nowhere there yet, right?
Yep. Yep. Yep.
If you really see, I think we are almost 10 years back. If you go to India and you go to Singapore, Singapore is the closest neighbor that we have. If you see the
Sure.
digitalization and the way they have progressed in terms of the industry norms, it's a huge gap that we are facing today, right? So
Right.
when we
Right.
talk about L&D or the future for training in Malaysia, I think a lot will depend on how we want to really use digitalization to our best. That doesn't mean
Mm.
taking away the face to face training, because that will always create an impact. But however, I
Yeah.
think continuous learning, advanced methods, the phygital approach. When I say physical as well as combining, like your immersive learning,
Yeah. Yeah.
it was a learning which was digitalized. We were
Yeah.
looking at a digitalized platform, but we were people sitting there. So we were a participative crowd with a digital era, and that's what I call phygital learning, right? So these
Yeah.
type of things, I think, are something that Malaysia has to look into. And also, in at the same time, not just talk about digitalization, just not talk about 4.0, but actually start
Right.
implementing it. And
Yeah.
it's a sad story that I go to big organizations and do training, and they're still using Excel to do filling in their reimbursements and all.
Mm.
So yeah,
Right.
that's something that I think really needs to change in Malaysia.
Yeah, I think definitely. I think I can agree with you. I know that HRDC is probably launching a new platform soon. That's what they announced. So
Yeah.
we'll see how that changes it. But
Yes.
I think you're right. I think there needs to be a more of a push to get international providers and learning options to come into the local space, right? Because I think there are a lot of options that exist out there,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
But HRDC, in a sense, has always kind of created a model where it's Malaysians for Malaysians, kind of model.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
do see a lot of international trainers being certified and running programs here. We do the same, but I think there needs to be a lot of a bigger push around that, so that we also get that exposure and we move our horizon for out of Malaysia as well. It's not just Malaysian trainers
Yes.
training Malaysian employees. And
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
this probably my last question before we wrap it up. I mean, if
Yes.
you're, your business freshly simple, what's the ambition like? I mean, if you were to look at, uh, down the road, maybe 2 3 years from now, is there a core area that you really want to be known for, or do
Yes.
you really want to be that total end to end wing, that any company, regardless of oil and gas or any industry, can come to for all their HR solutions? So is there a specific area that you're looking to really be the best in?
So end to end, definitely, we won't give up on that. That will be a part of the
Okay.
organization in the long run too. However,
Yep.
in the learning and development space, our focus would be more passionate towards the youngsters, towards education, more
Okay.
towards nurturing the youngsters. So that is the main aim of Freshly Simple. The other trainings will continue, but at the end of the day, I think what we want to really come out in Freshly Simple as be those consultants for organizations, where we also partner with them in making them understand the gaps, in making them understand, because as you know, Arun, most of the companies, I think, shy away from doing training and development because they feel it does not demonstrate any ROI, right? And
Yep.
for HR and for people like you and me to really showcase that yes, the training can create an impact and a change and can then indirectly show that revenue, is all on people's participation and how they work within an organization. So I think the space that we want to be in is in education, where we want to nurture the youngsters. We definitely will look at other training, but that is where Freshly Simple wants to focus, and more on the HR consulting services, where we create journeys, we create platforms, we create
Yep.
journeys for people to understand their potential, their capabilities, and really, see a career growth. Because sometimes you're in an organization stuck for 4 5 years or 6 years in the same role,
Yeah.
so then you really doubt your capabilities and see your self-worth within an organization. And that's where we
Mm.
want to come in. We want to create
Okay.
those spaces in learning journeys. Yeah.
Okay, very interesting.
Yeah.
So thanks, Cheryl, for this candid conversation. I think
Yeah.
for the audience, this is something that we do on a weekly basis, where we talk to different providers, different freelance trainers, just to get a sense of
Yes.
what's happening in the market. Um, so do stay tuned for our weekly podcast that we release on our social media platforms. It's only about 20 25 minutes to 30 minutes long, and
Yes.
it's our way of also connecting the market and reaching out to the audience on TalentStore as well. So thank you so much, Sheryl.
Right.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Arun.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
we continue to collaborate and we grow as
Yes,
an industry in
absolutely.
Malaysia.
Look forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, look
All
forward to
right.
that.
Thank you
And
so
thank you
much.
for giving me this opportunity. Have a wonderful
No
day.
problem.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you, everyone. See you in the next
Yeah.
episode.
Thanks. Bye.